Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Perez,
And I'm Wesley Long.
and we're bringing you a fresh new take on disaster preparedness.
Welcome to Disaster Class.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Disaster Class. So this week, we're going to be having another EM Weekly episode aired, this time with Wesley solo. Wesley was interviewed on EM Weekly again, and him and Zach were talking about gear and just different types of gear that they like in applications. And so enjoy this episode of EM Weekly featuring Wesley Long. Today's episode, we wanted to, so we started talking about it on LinkedIn, and we wanted to chat about gear. I think most emergency managers are gearheads. I think we really like to have cool gear. We like to play with the latest technology. And you and Jason, your partner in crime there, have a business essentially kind of also built around this. So you get to work with lots and lots of different gear. Maybe talk about that, and as well as like a little bit about your background, just because not everyone may know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So first and foremost, from our company, Instinct Ready. That's the name of our company that Jason and I have as a business. And yes, we do produce commercially made go bags. Now, we like to start by saying that the best go bag anyone can have is the go bag they build themselves. And then what we say is that meets the minimum survival standard. So that minimum survival standard, that's something people probably don't know about. That's something Jason and I are working on to bring to bear, because when I started researching, so my background, I got a go bag years ago, didn't know anything about anything. Got one of the little cheapies, it was like red, $40. A few months later, I opened it up and said, "What's in this thing?" I was grossly disappointed by the quality and by pretty much every aspect of it. I was like, I must be able to do better. So I just started consuming data. Being that gearhead, this YouTube channel, found all these people that, knew what they were talking about. And I just started trying to consolidate all of that, because I'm super OCD. Try to consolidate all that into the minimum. What do I need, right? Some people are like, "Oh, defense, you've got to have 5,000 rounds of ammo." Okay, but should I have some water in there too, or
No, just ammo.
right? So it's just funny, depending on who you talk to. There's
Yeah.
so many varying views. So what I did find immediately, which was weird to me, was there's no standard.
Yeah.
So my background, EMS, I've been an EMT, and I'm currently a dispatcher for probably 15 years or so, collectively. So I'm very used to standards.
Yeah.
I get my ambulance. According to the state of New York or state of Connecticut, here's what an ambulance has to have in order to be certified as an ambulance. This number of bandages, all of those things are clearly delineated. Why isn't there something like that for go bags? Shouldn't there be?
Yeah.
Could there be? Would there be value in it? Because I've seen some go bags that people spend really good money on, filled with trash.
Or nothing. You'd spend $1,000 on the bag, and then you got to figure out what you're supposed to put in it.
That's it. And it's really dangerous almost, because someone will think, "Oh, I bought this thing for X amount, I'm okay."
Yeah.
When we might be worse off, right? So I'm one of those guys. I get it. People hate, even when I talk about my company, "Oh, pre-made go bag." Totally get it. Again, that's go bag. It's a bag you built yourself, so you are intimately acquainted with every single aspect of it.
Yeah.
But it should meet a standard.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're working on, where Jason and I, he just went to school for his master's in emergency management, so he got into how to do research. So we're developing a research paper that we will be submitting for peer review. That's an evidence-based approach to what should be.
Listen to that. Oh, we're getting a little preview here. Oh, that's cool, man.
Our plan is to set that standard. So it's like,
Yeah.
Hey, I'm spending X on a bag. Yeah, well, why don't we take a look at that bag? We'll put it up against the standard.
Yeah.
We'll tell you if there's any deviation, or if it doesn't hit something or miss, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the concept behind it. But back to what we do. We do have bags. Currently, right now, we've got really 4 main products that we offer. 3 go bags, really 3 different flavors of our go bag. We call it the U pack, because we still feel, even when you buy it, You should pack it with items.
All right, everyone. So we're going to pause real quick for this week's sponsors.
When you need an emergency plan, you need Doberman Emergency Management. Whether you are buying a home and want to know about your local hazards, or you are a professional needing additional support, Doberman Emergency Management can help. Visit DobermanEMG.com today to learn more.
Instinct Ready is here to help educate, prepare, and equip you for disasters. Everything from disaster preparedness education to quality survival products. Use promo code DisasterClass at InstinctReady.com today for 10% off site-wide, because preparedness starts at home. All right, let's head back to the show.
Yeah, I actually really like that. I like the packing cubes that you include in it.
So so what you're talking to now is our internal modularization.
Yeah.
We feel very, very happy about that. So things are organized. And again, if you want to buy just our outer shell and the shells, that's fine too. Put your own stuff in it, but still keep it organized so you have access to it. So it's not just everything dumped in the center of the backpack you got to rifle through when you need it. That's just not practical, So, and then the other thing we have now is a quick pack, which is actually your team helped us bring that to bear, because that's one of the things we also focus on is being able to create custom products for either civilians, everyday people, and then also we're getting into a professional series where we have a couple subject matter experts like in the USAR world that are helping us develop an actual USAR pack, so that when people go on these deployments, they have everything they need with them, and we can create a standard for that as well. So we're doing some fun things, we feel, over at Instinct Ready. We're testing gear constantly. We're trying to look at what's new and what's coming out, so to keep our consumers, as ready as possible, so that they can just grab something and go. Because everyone doesn't have the time, money, energy to be able to build their own bag.
Yeah.
Or if they do, it might take them 8 months to build it, right? And it's like, well, what are you doing in the interim?
Yeah. Well, so the little pack that now I've literally just forgotten the name of it.
Oh, the quick pack.
Quick pack. Yes. Yeah. So we gave those out at the Dynamic Populations course. So on the military side, I teach tactical casualty combat care, the entry level one that everyone's got to go through, TCCC. And so we have an IFAC. It's very similar to that. Yours has some extra goodies that our IFACs don't or whatever. But it was actually like kind of looking at it, I'm like, this is like, it's a little bit better. Like I kind of like how it's set up and configured. Like I said, it's got some additional things that we don't have in the military IFAC. But what makes it so great is, for folks that don't want to carry around a huge bag, but still want to have the bare essentials, it's all in that one cube, which is awesome. And so right after we got back from Atlanta, my wife and kids went on a camping trip. And before, I'd throw all this crap into bags for them and into boxes. It was a mess. It was all over the place. Tourniquets, some bandages, some splints. And this time I was just like, here, take this. And, you should be pretty much good to go for most of your injuries. And then shortly afterwards, they got back and we had some friends over, and one of our friends' kids jumped off the porch, split his lip wide open, bleeding everywhere. And I was like, oh, I just put a bunch of bandages in my kit. So now I went and grabbed it, and it's nice. It rips wide open, and I had it right there. So there, well, I guess we're kind of leaning into this anyways. I guess because you're a gear head, and you are kind of developing these systems, what is it that you think, and I'll give my opinion first. So some absolute basics that everybody should have on them. Tourniquet, some sort of hemorrhage control, whether it's hemostatic agent or I really like Israeli bandages just because they also have a pressure component to it, and they can kind of hold everything together. And then, your basic kind of first aid kit stuff. What's funny is when I joined, I started my EMS life back in the early 2000s, and tourniquets were like, you don't put a tourniquet on.
Because they're absolutely taboo.
Yeah, it was like you're gonna. I guess the argument was compartmentalization syndrome was going to be possible. So as you released it later, you were either going to kill it right there on the spot, or as you released it, you'd release some sort of poison into the body.
Toxins into that It was if you tourniquet, plan on losing it.
Yeah, which is obviously we learned a lot during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. So a lot of this was developed in the field to try to cut down on basically preventable loss of life. All of that investment in military equipment and research and everything has now sort of like turned the entire concept on its head. And now I mean we're training carry tourniquets with you everywhere, and in fact bleeding control above all else. Get the bleeding under control. So my recommendation, just that sort of basic kit. What other kind of stuff do you think people should have on them as sort of like just the daily driver type of thing?
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head. The biggest component is bleeding control.
Yeah.
You got to maintain the volume, right? Once you lose it, it's hard to replace it. So you got to keep as much of it in as possible. So, like you said, tourniquets. I feel tourniquets and a hemostatic, and not everybody knows what hemostatic is. That's a gauze that has been treated with a chemical agent that aids in coagulation and clotting very quickly.
Yeah, it used to be a powder, and there was there was an awful exothermic reaction that used to happen. Cool, you have a giant open wound. Now we're gonna pour this powder, and now the wound's gonna start to burn. So
yeah, let's do that because that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So now they've got the bandages that are treated with a hemostatic agent. So those two, above anything else, I think are like super huge. Tourniquet and hemostatic. Now you're Israeli, absolutely correct. The pressure component to it really helps keep things compact. Those are the main things, and then also too possibly like a CPR mask.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah,
we're getting into just hands only.
Sure,
but keeping the CPR mask, and then just another something simple. If you're dealing with this much bleeding control and trauma, have some good gloves.
Oh yeah, that's always good. Yeah,
right.
Scene safe BSI, right?
Yeah, you got to have that. BSI scene safety. That's first. So the gloves are huge. Some shears.
Yeah,
that's one of the first things we do in EMS. We have to be able to see clearly, so we got to remove the clothing around the wound to really give it an assessment.
Which is in your kit.
Which is in the kit. Yeah.
Yep.
Gloves, the shears, the hemostatic dressing, the tourniquet, Israeli bandage. All of those things I feel are kind of must-haves.
Yeah.
Like you really can't leave the house without those, which is why we love the Quick Pack, because we feel we're making it accessible and compact so everyone can have one. And if I had my druthers, I'd want the Quick Pack also deployed in every office cubicle.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of the old concept of, we know there's a first aid kit by the elevator on every floor.
Which hasn't been checked. It's it's the old metal or plastic ones. Like all the adhesives like dried out and gross.
We've all seen them. Yeah, we've all seen them, right? And then it's like the one emergency person is supposed to be maintaining that every year, but they're not getting paid for that.
No, that person quit 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, who is this? They weren't here when I was hired. So that concept, right, to get into next level thinking, I feel this should be in every cubicle. If I had my druthers, I would mandate it be the bottom right drawer of every cubicle.
Yeah.
So that everyone knew they had that understanding that if there was an event, heaven forbid, an active shooter, and you have to injured to get somewhere, you only have to make it to the next cubicle, because in John's desk, there's going to be a Quick Pack in the bottom right drawer where you can treat yourself. Right. So that's the vision behind the Quick Pack. That's the long-term vision that we hope to bring to fruition. But yeah, you really can't leave home without those things.
Yeah, I think it's so, and for a lot of people, I think it's hard. Like the go bag concept kind of does two things. It makes them think of their vulnerability in a disaster. So sometimes people are sort of hesitant to want to invest in that, because now they're thinking about like the bad stuff that might happen. It's like I always talk about the person who thinks they, might have cancer or be really sick. And so they don't want to go to the doctor to find out what it is that they have because of just the, kind of crushing anxiety of that. So, which is, yeah, exactly. We've all been there. So I think that that's like a good stepping stone, is to sort of like, all right, well, this is like stuff that I'm going to use every day. First aid kit, like, especially if you're doing stuff around the house, yard work, even just doing the dishes. When I teach my class, it's Air Force. So a lot of people are like, we're not going to get shot at. Like, I work in an office job. I'll be fine. And I'm like, all right, well, A, you don't know, you could get deployed somewhere where you will get shot at, but B, either way, you're going to go home tonight, and you're probably going to do some dishes at some point, and in that soapy water might be a very sharp knife that you don't see, and you cut yourself really bad. Now what?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I guess I could use that. And you drive to and from work, or you walk to and from work, you bike. Having a tourniquet, you could crash, you see somebody else crash, so having that stuff on you is actually reassuring. And then from there, I think that helps them sort of start to think about, okay, well, that makes sense. All right, so what's the next step? All right, so we've got our kind of first aid, first response, kit right there. What else do I need? So that's when you get into like your bigger packs. And the goal is to try to get 72-ish hours worth of stuff in. So once you have to leave your house for some reason, or you're stuck, somewhere else, you'll have that stuff to at least carry you through, hopefully to the point where some help can arrive. Or you're starting out, at your worst 3 days later, where everybody else is starting at their worst the minute it happens. So, that's where it starts to get into some other gear. Now, I did want to talk about for the folks who are currently sort of being impacted by disaster. So Ian and Fiona just happened. Puerto Rico got hit really, really hard by Fiona, even though it was, we talked about this, I think, in the last episode. Stop worrying about categories of storms. Fiona was not technically a strong hurricane, but it did a lot of damage, and it continues to do damage. Whereas Ian was a very, very strong storm. And, certain parts of the state actually fared pretty well because of how they were built and everything. Regardless, obviously this stuff happens. We had a relatively, calm season up until this point. But then within a month, we had two tropical events happen.
Yeah, within 10 days.
Yeah. So what kind of, if you're someone who is living in an area like that, what are some other things that you're thinking about as far as gear you should have right on hand?
Yeah, great lead in. This is a really, I think, valuable discussion. I want to touch on a few things that you said, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
So,
yeah.
We had some people don't even realize we have Fiona and then Ian, 10 days apart.
Yeah.
And again, Fiona didn't hit like the U.S. mainland, so a lot of times it didn't get as much coverage. But as far as scale, there's a bar that NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, sets for devastation value, and it's $1 billion mark with a B. When it hits $1 billion, they put it on a special category, and it becomes like a big deal. So far to date in 2022, we've had, I think the research shows, I sent you the link, I think 15 billion dollar events so far. Both Fiona and Ian hit that $1 billion expenditure,
which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So both major storms, like you said, regardless of the category, maybe that Fiona had. So both huge. Now to your question of what should we have? So a lot of your consumer base is going to be emergency managers, those in the EM world. So they're going to be very familiar with something called the community lifelines. So the community lifelines are 8 specific categories of, let's say, services that every community has, whether you know it or not. These 8 things are sustaining your community. So in a disaster, when an area has been impacted, the problem is one or more of these community lifelines can be impacted.
Yeah. And that's like power, healthcare, communications.
Yep. Yeah. So there's safety and security, food, water, shelter. I got it pulled up here. I'm cheap.
Perfect.
Health and wellness, energy, communication, transportation, environment. Right. So those are the community lifelines that every community needs to thrive. When you're impacted, one or more of those things aren't happening, which is the reason why you have to do one of 2 things: either shelter in place, right? And with your shelter in place, you've heard of shelter in place kits. Again, the concept is at your house, have all of those areas that the 8 community lifelines are taking care of for you stockpiled so you can sustain yourself. In a go bag setting, you have to have that scaled down, able to be carried on your back so you can be on the move, because you have to leave because your community is no longer providing those things that you need to sustain life.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the concepts. So your gear is going to be commiserate to those 8 community lifelines. Oh, you're right. If you're going to get a solar panel, right? Why? Because your energy is an issue.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So you want to get a portable generator or something at your house. That's because the energy component is not working in your community lifeline. So you have to generate your own power so you have light and heat. Right. On a go bag setting, what I have in my personal bag is I've got a 10-watt 3-panel solar panel output to USB. So what I do from that is not just charge my phone directly, charge a battery pack.
Yeah.
Right, to collect it. So I want to be at least in the 10,000 milliamp range of storage for that, because I think when we did the research on this, the iPhones, like I'm an iPhone user, so like the iPhone batteries are usually between 6 and 8,000 milliamps in storage space. So if you've got a 10,000 milliamp battery, you can fill your phone from 0 to 100 at least once.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really good gear to have in the energy component. Solar panel, the USB output, and then collect that so you can use that energy at any time, right? If you don't have the battery, you're contingent on when the sun is out and you have to be directly connected to it. So those are little things that people don't always think about. So I've got a solar panel. Okay, great. But what are you going to do at night? There's no sun. So
yeah, this is the same argument I hear. I'm a huge advocate of solar and battery storage and everything. And people are like, oh, solar going to work? Well, guess what? The sun goes down. It's like, well, yeah, I don't mean like that's solely what we're going to run it off of. Like there's batteries too that are part of this.
So you can parcel it out at a later time.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of solar and the portable solar. And now the little generator kits are actually getting to be smaller and hold more power and have more features and stuff. Like I know Jackery makes them. Goal Zero makes some like really fancy stuff. They make great stuff. Yeah.
Great brands. So now there's like the hybrid in between Shelter in Place and Go Bag that people can be thinking about. We did a podcast episode on this over on our channel, Disaster Class. Your bug out vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. If you do have the opportunity to use your vehicle to move from point A to point Z, that can be loaded up with some things that maybe you wouldn't carry on your back. So it can be more robust than your Go Bag, probably not as robust as your Shelter in Place at your house, at your basement, where you don't have to carry it or move it. But again, that's like a third level of opportunity. You might have a portable generator in there because you could throw that in the back of your truck. Have that set up with solar, right? So there's certain things that you can do with those 3 stages.
Or the next thing,
F-150 Lightning.
Yeah, buddy. Oh yeah, you don't even need to go anywhere. You got the. I'm on my second electric vehicle. So I had the Nissan Leaf, which I love, but had the worst battery. I mean, like in the winter, you could go about like 30 miles. Like it was awful. It was an awesome car to drive. It was the most quiet car I've ever driven, but it wasn't quite there. Now I have a Bolt, which is self-heating if you have certain battery packs. So they have largely fixed that at this point. Fortunately, mine was not part of the ones that were sort of exploding. Although I also looked at the data for that, and those cars were burning at a far less rate than your average gas-powered vehicle. But yeah, so the Ford F-150 and the new GM vehicles are going to be part of a system where essentially you can draw off of the vehicle battery into their house. To take this even another step further, and we're getting kind of off the rails here, but this is something that I think as emergency managers, you need to start thinking about and advocating. Electric buses that a lot of cities are starting to utilize because they're cheaper to operate. They're more expensive up front, but there's almost no maintenance. They're way quieter, which, anyone who lived in an urban environment, like having those loud old buses going by all the time kind of stinks. And it stinks because it's actually just polluting diesel particulate in your face. Or natural gas, which is a little bit quieter, still loud. These electric buses, when they're hooked up, can basically act as giant battery packs. I mean, that's what they are, and power much larger things. So your shelters, your hospitals, and schools. In fact, a lot of schools were realizing, the ones who tapped into some money last year, that over the summer they were able to actually store electricity in their buses and then help offset grid demand. And so they were making money off of their school buses.
Yep.
But as emergency managers, you know, when you're thinking about this stuff, for your next EM vehicle, right? Like most of your emergency management, you know, if you're lucky enough to have a vehicle, you're probably not going too much further outside of your community. But your vehicle could essentially power your entire emergency operations center if necessary. It could power your, you know, mobile communications center or your mobile EOC. I think that EMs need to fully embrace this stuff, the alternative energy, because these are the things that survive, disasters. You know, having portable wind power, like there's wind generators that you can get that you can mount to vehicles and stuff. But the idea is just power is life now, and so batteries, you have to have this stuff. You know, make sure that you've got it. I have battery kits that I keep in sort of my, you know, deployment kit. And I check them and charge them up every once in a while. And then also use them, like, you know, if you store batteries at full capacity for a long time, it kind of degrades it and stuff. But newer batteries, the chemistry is much, much better. But yeah, so, you know, using that stuff. And some of the other stuff you talked about, like your vehicle kit, you know, there's the basics like, you know, warm, you know, you got to keep warm. So space blankets are those good old fashioned military wool blankets. That actually keep you warm even if they're wet. You know, some sort of tools to get out of, you know, a jam. So shovels, maybe some sand, etc. You know,
one tool that people often forget, and it's super cheap, just having a water key.
Oh yeah.
So I used to be a high-rise window cleaner, so we were dealing with hydrants.
Really?
Yeah. So just having a water key
on
you so that you can turn on utilities.
Yeah.
And maybe turn off utilities. It's a cheap ad, but a huge value add, right? Huge value.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I was just in New York City over the weekend, and there was like a high rise that was, I think, just built. It was one of the newer ones, and there was a window cleaner, you know, thing going up and down.
Yep.
And I was just like, I'm not super afraid of heights, but I don't think you could pay me enough to do that. That job seems terrifying.
We'll have to have a whole nother.
Yeah, no, we should definitely. I'm very interested in this.
It was awesome when I did it. I loved it. We had 2 sets of ropes, 150 feet, 300 feet.
Yeah.
We worked mostly in Connecticut because the rules were different in New York. Anything over like 100, you had to have a permanent scaffolding system, which is what you heard.
Yeah.
Going up and down, it's attached to the building. But being in the bosun's chair with your main line and your safety line, when you leap over the edge of that building and that first time you get tension on it, whoo,
yeah, you lived. You get to clean another day.
that wakes you up in the morning. We had some fun with that.
Oh, that's great. All right. So I think so we sort of talked about the stuff that like you should have around your house. The utility keys. So understanding your what turns your gas on and off, knowing how to do that stuff. Those are some basics. Window breakers. You know, whether it's specifically, I know the kit you guys have actually came with a window punch. I think it was a pen too. It was a pen window punch, which is kind of cool. The other thing, so for your car and stuff, when you're looking at that stuff, you also need to know what your car's made of. So there are vehicles that have windows that a window punch will not work in. I think Volvo for a long time was using this safety glass that when we were firefighters, we were basically told like, the window punch isn't going to do anything. You know, you're basically going to have to make a hole and then cut the window out using a Sawzall or some other device. And it's going to be awful because it's plastic and it's going to melt. So, you know, having that stuff, you know, some sort of lights. I'm a huge flashlight guy. Ask my wife. There's flashlights everywhere in this house, especially with little kids. We're lucky the power doesn't go out here that often. But when it does, they freak out. So we have flashlights all over the house and lanterns. What's your like? Yeah, go ahead.
It's a simple purchase, but it might make all the difference in the world. Headlamp.
Yeah, that's what I have.
You don't have to hold the flashlight.
I have a extremely bright headlamp. I spent more money on my headlamp than I did on my flashlights because
they're expensive. Once you start getting into those things,
yeah,
the value they're going to be expensive, but they're going to be worth it.
Oh yeah. I use it when I'm running my smoker in the winter and, you know, where I'm trying to like get the temperature and move stuff around. And it was like, I was had the flashlight in my mouth. It was awful. And then I bought I bought a cheap headlamp at first, and I was like, oh, this works really well. I need a good one. And so now I've got this really fancy one. And then I've got some portable work lights as well. But yeah, the thing is, so basically anywhere where there's light, you're probably okay, right? The hurricane goes through, the lights out. That means you're outside. You're probably safe right there. But as you start to get into the rescue work or recovery stuff where you need to get back into buildings and stuff, like don't cheap out on your lights. Light that stuff is your life. And particularly for emergency workers, invest in good lights. Streamlight makes really good lights. I'm trying to think of what my headlamp is. I probably have the box around here somewhere, but good lights. All right. So kind of dragging this back into emergency management stuff.
So
I
can
do.
touch on one thing that
Yeah,
you
yeah, of
mentioned?
course. Yeah.
Because you talked about it, and it's funny because on disaster class, we already have scheduled an interview with a homeowner who's really big in his community. They have a neighborhood watch resiliency community program,
Yeah.
which I'm not gonna lie, we're gonna look at, see if I could deconstruct it and replicate it, right?
Yeah.
Because if we can show people how to do that, it's huge. But he just converted his house to solar. He just got a Tesla unit.
Yeah. Those are sweet.
The app that Tesla has, so it shows him exact usage. It shows him how he's offsetting the power grid, how he's sending power to the local power grid, how
Yeah.
he's getting money for it. He is ecstatic about it. We're going to have him on and talk about the value of that. So again, just in the world of thinking, even for home ownership, again, and you said it perfectly. Yeah, there might be a big fig to buy in, right? The initial, but all of the federal and state rebates for that really help equalize that over the course of 5-10 years.
Oh yeah.
The tax benefits that he's getting from having it. So
and just the utilities. I mean, unless you're in like one of the states where the utilities kind of scummy towards this, and I think most of them are starting to finally see the light. We were super fortunate. Green Mountain Power, which is our state utility, the largest one in the state, they are all in on this stuff. So they'll subsidize purchasing of a Tesla wall. Like you can get a Tesla wall for like half price. And they tap into it during high demand days. So like in California over the summer, they have a couple different things. There's the public safety power shutoff stuff, which is usually like you're just isolating it because they don't want the power lines to start fires. And then there's another one where it's essentially a demand reduction that was used. There was a bunch of news about that where basically the state sent out a mass notification to their people and said, hey, if we don't lower the use of electricity right now, we're going to have some serious problems. There's going to be blackouts, there's going to be brownouts. So let's go ahead and everyone shut your stuff off. So when you start to build this stuff in, there's a green side of it. There's a techie side of it, which I'm all about. But there's also a resiliency side of it. And so this gear is now helping not only to, keep the lights on, but they're also reducing the possibility that you're going to lose power or have issues during a crisis. So by embracing this stuff, and that includes like even fire trucks and stuff now. You can get an electric fire truck. LA's got, I think, the first one in the country they're running right now for trial. And, something happens, your fire station runs out of power. If you can run your entire fire station off that truck. And a lot of this stuff, like you said, it's offset through different ways. So like if you're sending power back to the grid, usually the power company's either giving you credits or in some cases you might even be getting, money for it. But there is an offset there. And then long term, there's the tax benefits and other stuff that can help, and payoff is relatively quickly. But for municipal and public safety agencies, a lot of times that's grant funded now. There's a lot of grants to get people out of this because one thing they found out is fire trucks, as cool as they sound and as much fun as they are to drive, same with ambulances, just that diesel particulate is causing cancer. It's causing lung issues. You breathe enough crap on a fire scene, the last thing you should have to worry about is your truck's trying to kill you. So as all that stuff gets electrified and moved into that world, there's a lot of money to sort of make those conversions. So it's just something to think about. Like if it's something you're interested in, I actually used to work for a transportation research center, and there's a program called Green Cities. And I think every major urban, what do they call it? Like metro area has a Green Cities representative. And those folks can tap into all sorts of different grants, including for public safety vehicles. So we did a bunch of stuff at my last job trying to get police cruisers, converted over, or to get, stuff so that they could shut down when they're, rather than just idling all day, that they could shut down and the police could turn them on remotely and stuff so that they don't have to leave them running all the time. So there's all sorts of cool stuff out there.
All right. So that concludes this episode of Disaster Class. Tune in next week for part 2 of the episode with Wesley, and as him and Zach talk more about their favorite gear. But as always, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating. Let us know something you appreciated about this episode. And as always, if you have a question, you have a disaster story to share or a preparedness tip, send us an email at disasterclass@instinctready.com, or send us a message at Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And doing so always puts you in the running to be featured on the show and win some cool stuff. So thank you for tuning in. Stay educated, stay prepared, stay equipped. Class dismissed. Disaster Class is part of the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services.